You're listening to Two in a Bar.
Hello, and welcome back to Two in a Bar. I am Chris.
And I'm Joe.
Today we're going to be talking about the best things about playing in an orchestra.
The best, besides sort of being with you.
Well, other than that. So obviously, we've both played in a fair few orchestras over the years, chosen to do that. And we thought we'd go into some of the reasons why playing in an orchestra is such a good experience. And
because we couldn't do anything else. That was it. That was the only choice.
Yeah.
That was it.
Is that or sit alone?
It was that or a slippery slope. So,
Yeah. So
what are we doing? What are we doing? We're doing top three, aren't we?
Do you know one thing I like,
things.
Joe? And that's consistency.
Yes, exactly. Because we've done top 5, top 4, and now top 3.
Yeah. So as we've said in pretty much every episode so far, please bear with us whilst we're getting used to this. We will get better and more organised at things.
I disagree. There's a plan, and kudos to you if you can spot it. So,
okay, so this isn't going to be any kind of definitive list that we've coordinated and pre-planned. We're just going to alternate saying our top things that we like about playing in an orchestra.
Yeah.
Okay, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, okay, I'll kick us off. Okay. I think my number 3 is the idea of playing in an orchestra can become something which is very unique for you because it's challenging, right? But it's a very different type of playing from solo playing. So if you are someone who is primarily a soloist, and particularly if you have an orchestral instrument as your second instrument, which is something that happened to me because I learned the piano first. Piano, obviously, almost exclusively a solo instrument. I know you accompany and things like that as well, but certainly when you're learning, very much a solo instrument. Whereas playing in an orchestra is a completely different idea. You are a very small cog in a big machine. Things like, because I was a brass player, I had lots of bars rest, things like that, knowing when to do it, when to count, and it improves your playing sort of beyond belief, I would say.
Yeah, hugely so.
Improves your musicianship, doesn't it? It has to, because you have to listen so much more. You have to be aware of what everyone else is doing. There could be someone on the other side of the room which you essentially are communicating with through your playing, right? And things like that, I think it can make you look at, or maybe rather listen to music in a whole new light, and gives you a completely different appreciation for it. Because of that, it is challenging in a good way. It challenges you, because you have to, rise to it, don't you? You have to think, well, I've got to do this out. And there might be, for example, particularly if you're an impact instrument, I was a trombonist, which is, used more sporadically.
Instrument.
Well, it is. Let's face it.
I've genuinely never heard. Obviously, I can guess what you mean by it, but I've never heard that term.
Get used to it.
It's like an impact sub in football.
It's very much an impact sub. It's there to do the damage, isn't it? Along with perhaps the trumpet as well. But it's
percussion.
But because of that, it'd be very easy to switch off and things like that. You've got string players who are almost constantly playing things like that. And so it's a very new way of playing, and I always think that's really exciting and really interesting way of looking at it. So that's my number 3 for sure.
Nice.
About how it presents to you, if you've never done it before, a whole new way of playing.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so my number 3 is the social side of it. So we've dived in with a non-musical, non-playing one straight away.
Okay.
But a lot of my best friends are people who I've played in an orchestra with. I don't know about you.
I can think of one. I've actually not spoken to him in years, so I don't. No, you're very right, of course. Yeah. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, it's as well as obviously getting together, however often the orchestra rehearses, let's say it's once a week.
Yeah.
And playing this music and getting stuck into it. Like a lot of it's just, meeting new people, talking to people, and then, going there with people that you know already, who you've known for a long time and stuff, just friends. And it's just a really nice, sociable, friendly thing to do. There's always a break. There tends to be socials, organised by the orchestra. And then on concert day, you've got a gap in between the rehearsal and the concert typically, and people go out for drinks afterwards usually. Yeah, it's just a good lively thing to do with other people.
It's a team, isn't it? It's a team thing, really, which I think can be sort of overlooked, because I think a lot of people who've never done it before wouldn't think of it in that way. But I think that's what it is. Yeah. It steps on the toes of one of mine a little bit later, so maybe I'll save it. Maybe I'll save it till then.
Okay, fine. Let's move on to that. Sounds like I was being huffy about it. Fine. Let's move on to the next one.
Listen, we'll spend a lot more time on your next two.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
My second one is the exposure to different pieces, and we spoke a little bit about this on our previous episode. But what I love about an orchestra is, people will say, "Oh, we're doing, whatever it might be, like Shostakovich 13." I don't know where that's come from. I've never played that, but you end up knowing the piece very, very well.
Yeah.
And as a result of it, normally, like loving it, and you're discovering new parts of it that you didn't know. A good example that we did talk about in the previous podcast for me is Mahler's Second Symphony, which I would never go away and listen to normally, but because we played in it, it's become something that I do listen to, and that gives you incredible memories, and you look forward to certain parts of it. It makes you know a piece so well because you work on it so well. And there are lots of other pieces. I remember another one, actually, not a particularly famous piece, but we've spoken about it before, which is Balakarev Symphony No. 1. Might be his only symphony, I can't remember. And there's that third movement in that with the clarinet solo, which is just beautiful.
Yeah.
Isn't that there's no way, unless I happened to listen to a random concert once, that I would sort of seek that out and think, oh, I must listen to Balakarev's First Symphony.
Yeah.
The things like that, I think, are really special, and that only, for me, has only happened through playing through orchestras. You get to know these pieces that you would never have heard before, and start to, I'm going to even say, maybe even enhance your life somewhat.
I'm absolutely with you on this, to the point that
I thought you might be.
We've hit our first spanner in the works of our planning here. This is one of mine. So shall I just say another one instead?
Was this going to be your number two?
Well, no, I think this was going to be my number one.
I think you should argue why it should be number one.
Okay. Yeah, so 100% agree with that. There's so many pieces that I absolutely love now that, like you say, I probably wouldn't have come across unless we were playing them. Like not only really niche things, but just pieces by big composers and stuff that I maybe just not got around to listening to.
I agree. Obviously, I agree. I think we're very lucky to have had that, aren't we? And I also think maybe that's the reason why classical music isn't as popular, because maybe 200-300 years ago it was the only live music you could see, and obviously to a very, very exclusive group of society. Now people just don't bother because they've got access to music instantly. But when you put that much time into something, you can appreciate it maybe a little bit more, can't you?
Yeah, well, I think it's more that you've got a lot more choice these days, so you can just choose to listen to. Like, to be honest, I'm quite bad with all genre of music of just listening to stuff that I know I like.
Yeah,
and so this is it. If you're in an orchestra, it kind of like forces you to not only listen to but play things that you wouldn't normally do.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that slight. It's not taking out the comfort zone. That's not quite. That makes it sound a little bit more dramatic, but it is. It's just taking you to unusual places, isn't it?
Yeah,
for you. Yeah, good. That's my number two. What is your number two? Is it the same as that, or are we going to go somewhere different?
My number two, we touched on it in the last episode when we were talking about playing big pieces like Shostakovich 5 or Mahler 2. But it's just the sense of togetherness and camaraderie, different from your number 3, which was more about ensemble skills. But just
but how is it different from your number 3? That's what
my number 3 was social.
What would you say camaraderie is?
Okay, let me put it another way.
Not many people know this, Chris, but you are, of course, our resident French expert as well. So if this was just an excuse to bring up French words, I can't sound surprised.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit disappointed, Quelle surprise is what I would say for this.
I used to bring up French words a lot more often before I met your other half, who's very good at French. And rightfully put me in my place. Okay, to put it another way, I find it infinitely more rewarding. Let's say I'm playing a solo piece in a concert.
Yeah.
And I do a good job and it goes well. Sometimes.
For a change.
Yeah.
Wait, let me say that. Otherwise it's less fun for me.
Okay. I find it a lot more rewarding and satisfying doing something in an orchestra where you'll have done less playing probably because there's more bars rest and other stuff, and obviously the spotlight's been much less on you, but because you've contributed to something bigger.
Yeah. I know what you mean. Like, again, I don't want to keep using sport analogies, but I suppose it could be the difference. Some people prefer playing tennis singles on their own, but many people prefer to do team sports because you do have that sense of togetherness with it, don't you? And the sense of an achievement from many of you. You can be sort of greater than the sum of your parts.
Yeah, exactly. It's that.
Yeah, that's very nice. If I'd known that I too could put points 2 and 3 as just one whole point, I perhaps would have done that as well. But I take your point. Good.
There were other things I could have gone for, but I've decided to overlook in favour of that as a separate point.
Fair enough. Okay.
What's your big one?
Very much of a similar ilk. So my number 1 is the idea of it's playing with friends, but also it's the idea of getting to understand how good people can be.
Go on.
Well, so for example, and this might be a very specific thing for me, I was always aware that I was
because you just naturally assume everybody else is bad.
No, quite the opposite.
Okay.
Quite the opposite. So maybe. I was always very aware that in the music world, I was an okay player, a good player in some respects, but never amazing. And I was fine with that because I realized that people would be more talented than me. As you know, Chris, a very talented sister taught me that from a very young age.
Joe's sister. Yeah,
right.
Joe's sister's very, very good at the piano.
She's very incredibly talented. But obviously worked very hard as well. But that, and then also, whereas I perhaps didn't, which is also fine. I could accept that as well. I mean, perhaps wanted to do other things, but something incredibly, I think, humbling and also exhilarating about playing with people who are your friends, and then seeing them also perform incredibly well. You said this before, Chris, about people you perhaps looked up to, but you're a very good example of someone who became a close friend at university, and you can see them doing things really, really well with within an orchestra, and there are many others as well. We think this is so nice. We're all sort of very good friends, which won't necessarily always be the case with an orchestra, but you get closer and closer the more you play together.
Yeah, definitely.
And so you've got that whole, as you said, that sense of camaraderie like that, all in it together. But the fact that you can sort of see people excel in certain areas, and particularly when perhaps you wouldn't expect them to, it's not necessarily that you wouldn't expect them to, but it just might become as a bit of a surprise because you didn't know that was sort of in their locker. I think that's really exciting.
Tying it back to a piece that you mentioned previously,
Oh yeah,
Balakirev Symphony
Yes.
with the clarinet solo.
yeah,
So when we played that, the guy who played it, who's obviously a very
Yeah.
good clarinetist,
yeah,
I think
Yeah.
I probably hadn't really noticed before that. And then I was like,
100%.
oh wow, this guy's really good.
100%.
And, quite right. I mean, that's my bad for not
Yes,
knowing
but in a way,
beforehand, but
why
this kind of highlighted it.
I actually remember thinking as well after that piece, because you're right, he played that solo so well. And I remember thinking afterwards, oh my God, the clarinet section are phenomenal. Like, you think every one of them is amazing with this and could do that, and you thought that's it was a bit of a privilege to be playing with them, and hopefully it makes you step up your game as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, exactly right. It's really exciting to hear that and think, wow, this person's doing that. It's amazing. And it could even happen sometimes if it's, if you play a concerto and someone's good enough to do a solo, that's similar sort of thing. Very cool.
Definitely.
Yeah. So that's my number one. A bit like your sort of points 2 and 3.
Which you had the audacity to say were too similar.
I know, more for me, really. But go on, you're going to blow us away with a completely unique first point, aren't you?
So my number one best thing about playing in an orchestra is the chance to play new music you've not come across before.
So what we're discovering, Chris, is you've essentially made 1 point, haven't you? Because this was my point number 2, and your points 2 and 3 were almost the same one.
Between us, of a possible 6, we've got about 2.5 points here, which leads me to think maybe we should pre-plan them before. The reason we didn't previously with the stories was because some of the ridiculous stories I didn't want you to hear beforehand.
I completely
didn't want to hear
agree.
yours either.
I completely agree.
Maybe we should plan these more.
Listen, why don't you tell us more about if there's anything different about the learning new pieces, exposure things that I didn't really say, or maybe you can give a nice example. What's your favourite piece that you've discovered from playing in an orchestra?
I'm going to try not to go back to
outside Mahler 2 and Shostakovich 5.
Well, to be fair, it's actually, I know this we're talking about playing in an orchestra, but for conducting an orchestra, it's sometimes similar because a lot of the time I have kind of like an overriding say on programming.
Yeah.
But not to the sense where I'm just dictating, let's do Shostakovich every concert. Everybody else makes suggestions and stuff, and we have a committee in general.
Yeah.
Or if I'm doing guest conducting, that'll usually be a case of, here's the program. Do you want to come and conduct it?
Yeah.
So it's all been picked beforehand. So actually, really good one of those. Tchaikovsky's First Symphony. Didn't really know it beforehand, but since it's really nice.
Yeah, good. Well, there you go. Maybe I need to play it.
That's it. I'm actually going to throw out a bonus point for people who are feeling robbed.
Yeah, because people rightly would feel shortchanged here, wouldn't they?
Yeah. So as a bonus point, I'm going to say playing in an orchestra is great compared to playing in smaller ensembles because of some of the repertoire, some of the pieces that you can get stuck into. And I'm not just talking about pieces you've not heard before, but like the big, huge pieces like your Beethoven 9 or whatever it happens to be.
Completely agree.
If you're in your room, I mean, you might be playing it on the piano and you can cover a lot of harmonies and stuff, or if you're just playing it in your room on the violin by yourself, it's really, really, really doesn't have the same impact as playing it in an orchestra. It's completely night and day different.
Yeah.
And so it's just one of the big fun things about playing an orchestra, being a part of one of these huge pieces that you otherwise wouldn't get a chance to.
It's definitely a step up from playing sort of arranged film music in a wind band, isn't it? Without, not to belittle that, because that has its place, of course, but it does feel like it's much more. Well, it is literally bigger.
That's quite funny actually, because when we were talking about youth orchestras in a previous episode, I said that in the youth orchestra I played in, county youth orchestra, it had a system of working through different levels of orchestra before getting to the top one. I didn't want to go into the specifics then, But basically, actually, you started out in a wind band. It was
Yeah.
the junior wind band or something like that. Then the senior wind band, and then you went through to the orchestra, and the strings did the
Yeah.
same with string ensembles. So actually, that joke you made there about wind ensembles and stuff.
No, but
that's literally in the county that I was in. That's what we had to do. So
no, very much so. I don't want to take away comedy points from me, but that's why I said it. 'Cause it's literally the same for me.
yeah.
Interesting, isn't it? That
So
the interest broadens as you get older and you develop your playing into an orchestra.
we did a thing where people who were auditioning for the orchestra, they would have like a play, like an open day kind of thing, so that they'd go up and play in the orchestra for rehearsal.
Nice.
So we were doing, I don't know, whatever it happened to be, some arrangement of some film thing or some pop thing in C.
Nice.
In the wind band.
Yeah.
Next week, went up to the orchestra. Carmina Burana.
Nice.
Which
All
I can't imagine there'd be anybody listening who wouldn't recognise the opening and last movement. It's the same thing. The O fortuna from that's used in
the thing is, though,
a lot of
Chris,
films, adverts, etc.
in the opening movement, I hope the percussion player remembers to use the first movement to play it instead of the last movement. That's a very niche joke because apparently, nice little fact about Carmina Burana, which is
gone
off
over my
topic,
head.
but it's apparently the final movement of the normally published like music that you get for the percussionist has a horrendous page turn in it, even though it's the same as the first movement.
Oh, really?
And every professional percussionist knows to use the first movement music for the last movement because it's the same. Otherwise they have to have that horrendous page turn.
That's a fun fact. I did not know that.
There you go. Yeah. Use that in
Learning.
next orchestra rehearsal and cite me. Thank you.
That's it. As heard on Two in a Bar podcast.
Yeah. I hope it's right now. Someone might correct us.
Great, but in conclusion, overall, playing in an orchestra, really, really fantastic thing to do. Something I've always enjoyed doing, and would recommend.
If you get the chance to do it, do it.
Yeah, if you play an instrument. Do
it. That often helps.
Sometimes.
Some would say that I've broken my way in without having to do that. For some pieces, that's okay as well.
All right, thanks for joining us. Come back next week when we'll be talking the opposite of this. We'll be talking about the worst things about playing in an orchestra. But to be fair,
but you know what? At least we'll try and keep them different from each other next time, right?
Well, there is that, isn't there?
Yeah.
Just for a bit of balance.
The other side of the story,
Yeah. Looking forward to it. See you then.
See you later.
See you later.
I can mix it up. I can attack and defend.